For 26 years, there was a law in the United States that made sports betting essentially illegal everywhere except Nevada. 26 years. And then on one Tuesday morning in May 2018, 9 Supreme Court justices changed everything. Not just for gambling, for the entire business of American sports. But here's what most people don't understand about that moment. The leagues didn't fight it. They welcomed it. And what happened next reveals something uncomfortable about how modern American sports actually works. Something the leagues, the media companies, and the sportsbooks would prefer you didn't think about too carefully. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll see American sports completely differently. Let's go back to 1992. Congress passed a law called the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act, PASPA. The idea was simple. Protect the integrity of American sports by keeping gambling away from it. The NFL, the NBA, the MLB, they all supported it. They stood in front of Congress and said gambling was a threat to the game, a corruption risk, something that needed to be kept at arm's length. And for a generation, that argument held. Nevada ran its legal books. The rest of the country ran illegal ones. The American Gaming Association estimated that at the peak of the PASPA era, over $150 billion was being wagered on sports illegally every single year in the United States. Underground, offshore, through bookies. The demand never went away. The law just made sure none of that money reached the leagues. Think about that. $150 billion a year, and the NFL was getting $0 of it. That is the first thing you need to understand. This story is not about gambling. It's about who gets the money. Now let me introduce you to a governor from New Jersey named Chris Christie. In 2011, Christie signed a law legalizing sports betting in New Jersey. The NFL, the NBA, the NCAA, and Major League Baseball sued him immediately. They argued that gambling threatened the integrity of their product. The leagues won in federal court. Then they won again on appeal. New Jersey kept fighting. In 2014, New Jersey tried again. The leagues sued again. New Jersey lost again. But here's where it gets interesting. New Jersey's lawyers noticed something. The leagues weren't actually running sports betting operations themselves. They just wanted to make sure no one else could either. Their argument wasn't gambling is bad. It was, only we should decide when gambling becomes acceptable. New Jersey's case climbed all the way to the Supreme Court. And on May 14th, 2018, in a 6-3 decision, the court agreed. PASPA was unconstitutional. It violated the 10th Amendment. The federal government could not commandeer state legislatures to enforce a federal prohibition. The ban was dead. And within days, not months, not years, the leagues that had spent decades calling gambling a threat began calling it an opportunity. That tells you everything. Within 3 years of that ruling, 35 states had legalized sports betting. By 2024, Americans were legally wagering nearly $150 billion a year, almost exactly the same number that had been flowing through illegal channels before. Except now it was trackable, taxable, and most importantly, monetizable by the leagues themselves. The American Gaming Association reported that in 2024 alone, legal U.S. sportsbooks generated $13.71 billion in gross revenue, up from $11 billion the year before, a 25% jump in a single year. That is a revenue stream the size of a mid-sized Fortune 500 company, and it did not exist 5 years earlier. But the money alone doesn't explain why this shift happened so fast. There was another problem the leagues were quietly facing, and sports betting solved it in a way that no other product could. I'll get to that in a moment. But first, you need to understand what the leagues actually did with this new opening, because it wasn't subtle. In April 2021, the NFL made history. For the first time in the league's 100-year existence, it named official sports betting partners. 3 of them, Caesars, DraftKings, and FanDuel. The deal was structured as 5-year agreements. The total value? Collectively close to $1 billion flowing into the NFL's coffers. $1 billion from the same industry the NFL had sued into silence just a decade earlier. But this wasn't just a sponsorship like putting a logo on a scoreboard. These deals gave the sportsbooks the right to use NFL team logos on their platforms. They gained access to NFL footage and highlights for their apps. They could integrate betting content directly into the NFL's own website, and they paid for exclusive access to the league's official data feed. Real-time statistics piped directly into betting markets. The league didn't just open a door, It handed over the keys. And then, a year later, something even more significant happened. Something that crossed a line that most people didn't notice crossing. In September 2022, the NFL's Thursday Night Football moved exclusively to Amazon Prime Video, the first major professional sports package to live only on a streaming platform. No cable, no broadcast, pure digital. And from day one of that broadcast, DraftKings was the exclusive pregame and in-game odds provider. Think about what that means. You're watching a live NFL game on Amazon. Before kickoff, DraftKings is on screen showing you the spread, the over-under, the player props. During the game, betting odds are integrated into the broadcast itself. You're not looking for the odds. The odds are finding you. This is not advertising in the traditional sense. This is structural integration. The betting content is not a commercial break. It is the broadcast. You probably assumed that sports media and sports betting were still two separate things. One covering the game, one profiting from it on the side. But that line disappeared in 2022. And most viewers never noticed. Here's the problem the leagues were actually trying to solve. And this is the part the industry rarely discusses openly. Fan engagement was declining. Not in revenue, the money was still flowing. But in attention. Younger audiences were watching less linear television. The average age of a live NFL viewer was creeping upward. The NBA was fighting cord cutting. Baseball was struggling to hold viewers past the fifth inning. The sports product was losing the battle for attention against streaming, social media, and short-form content. Betting solves this problem in one move. Because when money is on the game, every play matters. A casual fan might not care about a 17-3 game in the fourth quarter. But a bettor who took the favorite minus 14 points suddenly cares deeply about every incomplete pass, every penalty, every timeout. The game becomes a financial event. Attention doesn't drift, it locks in. The leagues understood this. A bettor watches more minutes per game than a non-bettor. A bettor checks scores more frequently. A bettor consumes more sports media, follows more stats, subscribes to more data services. In business terms, a bettor has a dramatically higher lifetime value as a customer. Sports betting is not a side product for the leagues. It is a fan retention tool. And the media companies understood it just as clearly. In late 2025, DraftKings announced a multi-year advertising agreement with NBC Universal, one of the largest media companies in the country. The deal gave DraftKings exclusive integration and digital sponsorship rights across NBC Universal's entire sports portfolio: the NFL, NBA, PGA Tour, Premier League, NCAA, on every platform, every screen. Earlier, Turner Sports had already signed with both DraftKings and FanDuel, with FanDuel becoming the exclusive sportsbook partner for NBA programming on TNT. FanDuel odds were integrated directly into Inside the NBA, one of the most watched studio shows in sports television. This is the media business making a strategic calculation. Betting content drives engagement. Engagement drives ratings. Ratings drive advertising rates. And sportsbooks are willing to pay massive fees for the right to be embedded in that content. The architecture of how Americans watch sports is being rebuilt around the assumption that a growing portion of the audience has money on the game. Now here is where the numbers start to tell a story that should make you stop and think. The American Gaming Association projected that the four major sports leagues, the NFL, NBA, MLB, and NHL, collectively stood to gain over $4.2 billion in additional annual revenue from a fully mature legal betting market. The NFL alone, $2.3 billion. Major League Baseball, $1.1 billion. Compare that to what the leagues were earning from their actual sportsbook sponsorship deals. The NFL's billion-dollar package with Caesars, DraftKings, and FanDuel, spread across 5 years, works out to roughly $200 million per year, a fraction of the projected long-term value, because the real money is indirect. It's the fan who bets and then watches more games. The bettor who subscribes to a premium streaming package to catch every game. The engaged viewer whose attention raises the value of the next broadcast rights negotiation. Sports betting is not a revenue line item for the leagues. It is a multiplier on every other revenue line they already have. The leagues figured this out. And once they figured it out, there was no going back. But let's talk about who is not winning in this system. The sportsbooks themselves operate on thin margins. They take bets. They pay out winnings. They keep the difference, what's called the hold rate. In 2024, sportsbooks held 9.3 cents of every dollar wagered. That sounds small. On $150 billion in bets, it produces $13.7 billion in gross revenue. But against that, they carry enormous marketing costs, technology infrastructure, state taxes, and the constant arms race of offering better odds and bigger bonuses to attract customers. The leagues get the stable income. The media companies get the ratings. The states get the tax revenue, $2.8 billion in 2024 alone. And the sportsbooks are locked in a brutal war with each other for market share. DraftKings and FanDuel together control roughly 2/3 of the American market. Every other operator is fighting for what's left. Customer acquisition costs in this industry can run hundreds of dollars per new user. Many bettors churn through free bet promotions and then go quiet. The business of sports betting is actually harder than it looks from the outside. But the business of having sports betting in your ecosystem, that's extraordinarily profitable. And that is the system the leagues have built. Here's a question worth sitting with. You've been watching this unfold. You've seen how the leagues went from suing states to signing billion-dollar deals in less than a decade. You've seen how the media companies wired betting odds into live broadcasts. You've seen how the entire architecture of watching sports in America is quietly being restructured around engagement through wagering. So ask yourself, who decided that this was acceptable? Not a public vote, not a congressional debate, not a consumer movement demanding that odds appear on the Thursday night football broadcast. This was a business decision made by leagues, media companies, and technology platforms. The Supreme Court opened the door and the industry ran through it, fast, coordinated, and at enormous scale. By 2026, 38 states and Washington, D.C. have legalized sports betting in some form. The NFL, the same league that had contractual anti-gambling clauses in player contracts for decades, is now in active renegotiation with DraftKings and FanDuel for the next generation of partnership deals. The previous contracts expired. Both sides want new ones, because neither side can afford to walk away. The NFL needs the engagement, the sportsbooks need the legitimacy, and the broadcast platform, whether it's Amazon, NBC Universal, or whatever comes next, needs the audience retention that only wagering consistently delivers. This is no longer a business relationship, it's a structural dependency. And here is the twist, the real one. For 26 years, the argument against sports betting was that it threatened the integrity of the game, that gamblers might corrupt athletes, that the outcome of games might be manipulated, that money flowing into wagering markets would eventually distort the sport itself. Those concerns haven't disappeared. They've just been absorbed into the system. The leagues now have official data partners, official sportsbooks, official integrity monitoring programs. They've built the surveillance infrastructure to watch for suspicious betting patterns in real time. They've partnered with the very companies whose existence once represented an existential threat. The leagues didn't defeat gambling. They didn't resist it. They captured it. And in capturing it, they made themselves dependent on it. The money that flows through American sports today, through broadcast deals, sponsorships, streaming platforms, and fan engagement strategies, is increasingly calibrated to the presence of legal wagering. Remove betting from the system tomorrow, and the financial architecture of the modern American sports industry starts to show cracks. That is what the leagues learned in that decade between 2018 and now. Betting didn't just enter sports, it became load-bearing infrastructure. The next time you watch a game, any game, and you see the odds on the screen, and the pregame show runs through the spread, and the broadcaster mentions the over-under, and the app on your phone offers you a same-game parlay with one tap, understand what you're looking at.